Who wants to read the blessing? English one. Yeah. Just this. Okay, let's all bow our heads.
Praise are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel, and to all the peoples through his Son Yeshua, the Messiah, our Lord.
Amen. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Alright, so welcome to the next installment of Pesach, part 4, I think. So many parts, and there's going to be another one after this. Vince is going to go through the Haggadah, so the actual Seder, the retelling of the story, what you guys need to be doing, what you're going to be experiencing. I want to finish up the New Testament links. How Passover, literally, how we can see Passover through Yeshua and all the events that unfolded with Yeshua. Because as we know, Yeshua is our Passover Lamb. We see that many times in the Bible. But I want this to be something that, when we're telling the story of Passover, when you're going through the story of Passover, with whoever you're going to be celebrating it with, I want you to fire off all those New Testament links. Okay? How Yeshua actually plays that part. Again, the whole story of Pesach is what? God redeeming his people. Right? It's the redemption. It's the entire story of Pesach. God pulling people out of bondage to do what?
To set them aside for a purpose, to bring them out of bondage.
Yeah, redemption literally means to redeem for a purpose. Right? A price has to be paid. In the patriarchal society, you'd redeem someone with a price. The price needs to be paid so that you can fulfill your purpose that God wants you to fulfill. It's as easy as that. So we're going to have a look at how Yeshua actually does that for us today, in many ways, shapes and forms.
I also think it wasn't just for a purpose, but to remind the people they might have forgotten that he is God and no.
Yeah, it could be. Could be that as well. Forgot to prove points, move mountains, shake superpowers at the time, but yes. Okay, so last week we sort of went through the imagery of Exodus 12. As you can pretty much see, nearly everything here is from Exodus 12. These are the main images that we look at when we're dealing with Pesach. We have the original Pesach, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do the parallel over here. Okay? So I think let's dive right in and start with the first one. What was the first image? What was the first instruction for Pesach in Exodus 12?
It's a new month.
It's a new month for you, it's the first month, and on the 10th day you find a work with me, people. A lamb, yes. A lamb without defect. You inspect it for 4 days. You bring it into the house. You slaughter it at twilight on the 4th day. You put the blood on the doorpost with a hyssop branch. You partake of the offering, and you also share it with your neighbors. If it's too much for your household, you share it with your neighbors. Remember all of this? Let nothing of it remain. Whatever remains you throw out, burn up. No broken bones. That we find in Numbers 12, in Numbers 9 later. It's again telling the story of redemption, and there's a night of vigil. But we're going to go through all of these systematically now. First one, 10th day, we find a lamb. Yeshua came into Jerusalem from where? The Mount of
Olives, isn't it?
Olives, right. On a particular day, right? If we all go, guys, we're going to be jumping around all over the place, but if you can all go to Matthew 21. Matthew 21. It says, as they were approaching Jerusalem, they came to Bethphage. On the Mount of Olives, Yeshua sent 2 Talmidim, 2 disciples, with these instructions: go into the village ahead of you, and you will immediately find a donkey tethered there with its colt. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him, the Lord needs them, and he will let them go at once. This happened in order to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, riding humbly on a donkey, and on a colt, the offspring of a beast of burden. Where does he get that from? Which prophet? Zechariah. Zechariah. I've written it here. Can you guys see this? Hopefully. If not, come take a picture so you can follow along. So he's already quoting here from Zechariah, coming on a donkey. So the Talmudim went, we're on verse 6, went and did as Yeshua had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put their robes on them. And Yeshua sat on them. Crowds of people carpeted the road with their clothing, while others cut branches from trees and spread them on the road. The crowds ahead of him and behind shouted, Hosanna, please save us, please deliver us, to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Adonai, Yehovah. You in the highest heaven, please deliver us, Hosanna. When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred. Who is this, they asked? And the crowds answered, this is Yeshua, the prophet from Nazareth in the Galilee. So, selecting the lamb, going out and finding the lamb appearing for the first time. We have a link here to Matthew 21. How did the people know he was there? Or why did they know he was coming? Okay, but yeah.
Daniel 9 it actually
Okay.
says to David.
Right, so Daniel 9, what we have up there, and this is, I'm not going to get deep into this because this is very technical. I'm going to give you the high-level overview of Daniel 9. This is the foundations class, so we're going to keep it quite simple. But what we see is the people there expecting the Messiah to come. The whole of Israel was expectant. At that time, according to Daniel, they would have known from the decree of rebuilding the city, which King Artaxerxes gave, we would get the Messiah around about this time. Actually, exactly to this day. When Yeshua came down the Mount of Olives, it was exactly to the T as what Daniel predicted, what Gabriel told him. So let's jump to Daniel 9 and we'll get an understanding of what I'm actually saying. This is probably, I think it is, the most accurate and pinpointed prediction in the Bible. And it blows my mind. It's actually ridiculous, the math that goes into this. And for Yeshua to come down on the Mount of Olives on that specific day is ridiculous. It's so fulfilling that even the Jewish people don't study Daniel 9. Because they would realize then that that moment has passed for them. They're waiting for their Messiah. Our Messiah has come. Daniel 9 gives the exact day. So let's look at that quickly. Let's start with verse 20. Daniel 9, verse 20. While I was speaking, praying, confessing my own sin and the sin of my people Israel, this is Daniel, and pleading before Adonai my God for the holy mountain of my God, yes, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, swooped down on me in full flight at about the time of the evening sacrifice, 3 p.m., and explained things to me. He said, I have come now, Daniel, to enable you to understand this vision clearly. So he's interpreting the vision that he's just given him because Daniel was confused. At the beginning of your prayers, an answer was given, and I have come to say what it is, because you are greatly loved. Therefore, look into this answer and understand the vision. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city for the putting an end to the transgression, for making an end of sin, for forgiving iniquity, for bringing an everlasting justice, for setting the seal on vision and prophet, and for anointing the especially holy place. Know therefore and discern that 7 weeks of years will elapse between the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until an anointed prince comes. It will remain built for 62 weeks of years with open spaces and moats, but these will be troubled times. Then, after the 62 weeks, Mashiach will be cut off and have nothing. Right, powerful prophecy. Look at what's happening there. End of sin. for forgiving iniquity, for bringing an everlasting justice, for setting the seal on vision and prophet, and for anointing the especially holy place. He's saying, the Mashiach at this time, after these 70 weeks, what he said in the beginning, after these 70 weeks, Mashiach will be cut off. And then, there's a whole bunch going on in this, but we're gonna just look at the timeline for now, okay? So, what I want to paint out for you. In the book of Daniel, there's actually 4 decrees that are happening. Okay, the first decree, the book of Ezra. If you actually have a look at the book of Ezra, there's 4 decrees that line up with this. One is the decree of Cyrus. Okay, where Cyrus literally said, you guys can go rebuild the temple. Darius in Ezra 6 later also issues a decree around 518 BC, confirming what Cyrus said. Okay, also, rebuild the temple. King Artaxerxes later in, you see this in Nehemiah 2 verse 16 and in Ezra as well. King Artaxerxes, I'll spell it for you, it's quite a difficult thing. Artaxerxes. King Artaxerxes, king of Persia, says he issues 2 decrees. One in the 7th year and one in the 20th year of his reign. And in the one in the 20th year of his reign, in Nehemiah 2 verse 16, it basically says that he's decreed the rebuilding of the entire city. And that's when we see this actually happening. Zerubbabel, Ezra, Nehemiah, those books, if you read that, that's what actually happens. So we have this prophecy of 70 weeks, which is years, 77s. Okay, if you understand the principle of 1 day equaling 1 year, remember the spies that went out to spy in the land? How many days did they go out for? I'm talking about Joshua's time. How many days? 40. They came back and they were punished for how many years?
40 years.
40 years. Okay, so we have this also in Ezekiel 4 where God speaks about 1 day being 1 year. Yeah, we have weeks times it by 7, and that's how many years you have. That's the understanding. That's the way this prophecy makes sense. Hebraic mindset, 1 day, prophecy 1 year, most likely. Okay? Get that, and you'll understand what's going on here. So now we have the date that prophecy, well, that decree was given was the 14th of March. And we can go back in history. There's documents for this. 445 BC. If we take 70 years of 7s, and we work it out. There's my notes here. It works out to be 173,880 days. Because in the beginning we have 7 weeks of 7 years and 69 weeks of 7 years. So in total, we have about 532 of our years, but that's not right. We need to use a lunar cycle. How many days in a lunar cycle?
28.
28.
In a year.
Oh.
Okay. 360 days
60.
for a lunar year.
But you were 17.
You have 7 weeks of 7 and 69 weeks of 7. Okay? So what this equates to is 173,880 days. If you're interested, I'll share the article and all the findings on this later, but you guys can go dig as well. This points us right back to the exact time that Yeshua comes down. And that was, I'll get it to you now. Where's the date? I wrote that date just somewhere. 6th of April, 32 AD. This is when Yeshua comes down the Mount of Olives. Exactly 173,880 days after the decree that Artaxerxes gave to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. It
How
blows
do
my
you know
mind.
this?
Who?
You said Artaxerxes, or what?
Artaxerxes. He doesn't know anything about it.
But then how did he know the date?
No, he didn't know the date. He gave the decree on that date to everyone in Babylon to go rebuild the city of Jerusalem. He had no idea about this. It works out in God's timing, though. That decree, that one in his 20th reign, works out. If you take 173,880 days from that time to the time Yeshua comes down on the Mount of Olives, that's this exact prophecy fulfilled. It's one of those prophecies that you can go back and just completely blow people's minds if you're interested.
It's incredible.
Yeah. There's a lot of calculations that go into this. There's leap year calculations that go into this. There's also, apparently, in our solar calendar, one in every 128 days, we have to reduce it by a leap year. Our days are 128th longer than what they should be. There's a lot of calculations that go into this. I wanted to keep this simple. I wanted to show you that Daniel, even in Daniel's time, Daniel 9, that timeline predicts the coming of the Messiah. That's why there were people there. That's why they were expecting. They were like, yay, save us. Yeah, here's our Messiah. It was predicted about in Daniel. They would have studied that. They would have known about that. But they were expecting something else. They weren't expecting a spiritual freedom. What were they expecting?
Warrior.
A warrior. A lot of the times when you go back in history and you have a look at the so-called messiahs that piped up, they were going against government. They were going against the Roman government. They were fighting against them. That's what Gamaliel was speaking about in Acts. If this is from God, you're going to be fighting against God. But if it's of man, we're going to see it die out like those last two messiahs that came. It's very interesting how this actually plays out. And how we can actually link the Lamb on the 10th day, at that time, exactly to Daniel's prophecy. Make sense? And what does Zechariah state over there? What in Zechariah 9:9? What does he say? We read it just now. In Matthew 21. He's going to come on a donkey. Why? Why a donkey? Why not an elephant or a giraffe? Yeah?
Donkey is supposed to symbolize humility or labor.
Or
Royalty.
royalty.
My bad.
Royalty, yeah. They would have understood, oh, that's the king. That's the king that's going to overthrow the Roman government. No. Maybe with love, yes. But not physically. He's come to basically what Daniel was saying. What did Daniel say? Putting an end to transgression, for making an end of sin, for forgiving iniquity. Fulfilled. And then, let's look at the lamb. It says you will find a lamb. How do we know Yeshua is the lamb? I've given you scriptures. Shall we go to John 1? We're going to read and we're going to jump around quite a bit, guys, but it's good that you have this understanding of how these links actually fire off, especially when you're doing the Pesach Seder. John 1 verse 29. The next day, Yochanan saw Yeshua coming toward him and said, "Look, God's Lamb, the one who is taking away the sin of the world." John understood Daniel's prophecy.
29 or 24.
29. Sorry, my handwriting is terrible. That's a 9, I promise. 29. Okay? Behold, the Lamb of God. We have 1 Corinthians 5 verse 7, which also calls Yeshua our Pesach Lamb. We also have 1 Peter 1 verse 19, which I'm going to read. Always battle to find Peter. Where are you, Peter?
Dr. James.
Yeah.
129 is?
19. I'll find him eventually.
Table of contents.
Say again.
What if you use the table of contents?
Yeah, it would be smart. I'm stubborn.
Oh, okay.
I got it. That's somewhere. No, I don't got it. Yeah, I got it. 1 Peter 1 verse 19. It says here. Let me start at 17. Also, you are addressing as Father, the one who judges impartially according to each person's actions. You should live out your temporary stay on earth in fear. You should be aware that the ransom paid to free you, the redemption, from the worthless way of life which your fathers passed on to you did not consist of anything perishable like silver or gold. On the contrary, it was the costly, bloody, sacrificial death of the Messiah, as of a lamb without defect or spot. Another nice one is Revelation 5 verse 6, where you actually see Yeshua come up in the throne room as the slain lamb. Strong imagery there, but he comes up there and we can see Yeshua as the Passover Lamb for us. So we can easily make the link over here as Yeshua being the Passover Lamb. We have enough evidence to support this. Okay, we have multiple people saying Yeshua, Passover Lamb. Number one, it was the same day that he came in. It was, number two, the same time that it would have been slaughtered. Everything points to Yeshua in this. Again, we've got to understand redemption, that God, He redeemed the people out of Israel for a purpose. Yeshua redeems us for a purpose, right? What's that purpose? Everyone's going, yes. What is the purpose?
Please, bro.
Okay. And?
Make disciples. To make disciples.
To make disciples. Okay. And to draw close to God. I'm gonna, if God willing, there's enough time, which there never is. I'm gonna try and outline how the offerings make sense to us and how Yeshua is those offerings and what it actually means in today's understanding. If there's time, it's 25 past 12 already, so we need to move a little bit. Now, the next thing you see in Exodus 12, they go collect the lamb, and what do they do with it? They bring it into the house. To inspect it, right? Bringing it into the house. When Yeshua came down from the Mount of Olives, in Matthew 21, we see the first thing that he does is go straight to where? The Father's house. The house. In Hebraic understanding, the house is the temple. Listen to this. As he comes down the Mount of Olives, verse 12, Matthew 21 verse 12, Yeshua entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. So he gets in and he just kicks everyone out. He entered the house. And what we see later on when they start inspecting the lamb, who is Yeshua, remember in Exodus 12, we need to take our lamb and we need to inspect it. Why? Because God tells us it needs to be spotless and perfect and without defect. And what I find funny, is in Mark 14. If we can all jump to Mark 14. Lots of jumping around today. Mark 14, verse 53. He says, they led Yeshua to the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, with whom all the head Kohanim, elders and Torah teachers were assembling. So we have everyone that knows their stuff in terms of Torah, convening around Yeshua. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, where he sat down with the guards and warmed himself by the fire. The head priest and the whole Sanhedrin, how many people in the Sanhedrin? 70. Tried to find evidence against Yeshua so that they might have him put to death, but they couldn't find any. For many people gave false evidence against him, but their testimonies didn't agree. What were they testing him against? Torah. That's what they lived out. That's what they knew. That's what they taught. That was their standard of life. They tested Yeshua, the Messiah, the so-called Messiah at this point, with the Torah. And they found no blemish, defect or blemish. Nothing wrong. They couldn't find anything wrong with him. Just like the lamb that we have to find and bring into the house. This goes, we have to bring into the house and inspect it. And at the time the kids get very familiar with Mr. Lamb. Right? And Dad has to take lamb on the fourth day while the kids are out eating olives in the trees, and slaughter the lamb. And when the kids come back, poor lammy is gone. But there's a reason for it. Okay? Why did the lamb need to be slaughtered? Sacrifice. Okay. Practically, what did they? You can't just take lamb, pick up lamb, and walk them across the door. It's going to be awkward. The lamb's not going to enjoy it. The kids aren't going to enjoy it. The neighbors are going to think you're weird. Okay. They probably think you're weird anyway for slaughtering the lamb at the door, which is symbolic in its own right, but we won't get in there. You slaughter that lamb at the door. You take a hyssop branch, okay, which was probably a shrub nearby.
Hyssop was also used as a cleansing agent.
Right.
Medicine.
Very much so, as a cleansing agent, okay? And this is why God is painting this picture. He's like, you know that hyssop stuff you use for cleansing? Okay, take that, dip it in this blood, which you know symbolizes life. Because without blood, there's death, right? So your blood brings life. Stick it in a pool of blood that poor Fluffy had to give out, and then paint it on the doorpost. Okay, I'm going to rub this off quickly, and we're going to get into something exciting. Is there wet wipes here? Okay, but before we get there, well, we'll find wet wipes. Slaughter at dusk. So we know because of the scriptures in Exodus 12 verse 6 and Numbers 9 verse 12, we know that God has instructed them to slaughter the Pesach lamb at twilight. If you jump to Mark 15, next page, Mark 15 verse 33. I'm going to start at 33. At noon, darkness covered the whole land until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At 3 he uttered a loud cry, my God, why have you forsaken me?" On hearing this, some of the bystanders there said, "Look, he's calling for Eliyahu." They were confused. He's there at 3 o'clock and he gives up his spirit. At 3 o'clock, poor little Fluffy over here, he gave up his spirit. In order, thank you, man. In order to atone, to protect, and to serve as a peace offering, I'm going to get to that, for the people. So number one, it protects them. The blood of the lamb, the blood of the lamb protects whoever's in the house. That specific house. That blood of that lamb painted over the doorpost protects them. It's covering the house. Just as Yeshua covers us with his blood.
Because we are the symbolic house of God as well.
Yes. We're under his covering. Under Yeshua's covering. That blood covered the house. That's the picture you need to get with this. Okay? The hyssop again, Psalms 51 says, "Purify me or clean me with hyssop." They understood, the hyssop will cleanse me. You don't just rub it on the person. It's the symbolic understanding that you take that hyssop, you put the blood that is life, you smear it on the door that is protecting your house and the people that are in that house. And isn't it beautiful as well that lamb, if your house was too small to consume that lamb, what did God say? Share it with your neighbors. Take what you know, what you have, what God has given you, and share it with others so that their house can be covered, so that they can partake of that peace offering that God has given. Because if we don't share it, how will they ever hear? And if they didn't share it then, their kids would die. It's the same as our kids. If we don't share it and they don't teach their kids will have everlasting death. On the other hand, if you share it and you protect everyone with the blood of Yeshua, you have everlasting life.
So the covenant, you're actually in the house, and then you're in covenants as well. So it's being in your house because the instruction is stay in the house.
Yes.
And come into covenant by the
Yeshua is our house. Yeah.
So the door, the entrance to the covenants and to the house of the Lord basically.
And it was again, God's just talking to them in pictures that they understand. The door at that time, they would have understood the door to be a threshold covenant. You come into covenant with someone when you enter their door. I'm in covenant with you, let's eat. Okay? It's just this basic understanding that God's telling them. That thing that you use for your understanding of covenant, I'm going to use that for you, and we're going to paint blood on it. So we're going to make it a little bit more elaborate than what you're used to. They're used to putting it in a bowl on the floor. and that symbolizes the covenant. Now we're actually painting it on the doorpost in a peculiar shape, which would have meant something to them at the same time. And we just see this, God works in pictures with everyone. Now what I find beautiful is God said, when Aaron and Miriam came up against Moshe with Lashon Hara, evil speech, and God said to them, He said, with everyone else I speak in riddles and visions and whatnot, but with Moshe I speak clearly and directly. And everyone else, He speaks in visions and dreams and weird things that happen in their lives. I mean, you look at Peter in Acts 11, he's heavily confused as what's going on. Why is there a white sheet coming down from heaven with really unclean stuff in it that I've never eaten 10 years after Yeshua has been crucified and resurrected? I'm still keeping Torah. He's confused. God spoke to him in a riddle. In a vision, but a riddle. White sheet come down. Okay, what's going on here? I'm not eating the stuff. I don't know what you're talking about. It still says he was confused and puzzling over the meaning of the vision. Okay? But then God revealed it to him. With Moshe on the other hand, it was just straight. This is what you need to do, Moshe. Paint blood on the doorpost. They will understand what I'm saying. This is not a riddle. They understood. Okay? So, let's get to the shape of the doorpost. Right. Who's calling me? Okay. The shape of the doorpost is in the shape of the Hebrew letter?
Chet.
Well done. 10 points. Chet. Okay?
More than that.
Yeah. What is that in Hebrew?
Nekud.
Yud. Nekud. No, that's Nekud. Whoops. Okay, guys.
Sorry, trying to get more points.
Just painting pictures. This says Chai, which means life. Okay, we're going to get to that now. What I want you guys to understand is God got them to paint this peculiar thing on their doorpost in that shape. Okay, and if we have, let's go to Mark 14, verse 17. And we're going to make this link now with Yeshua. Mark 14, verse 17. Let's actually just start at 12. On the first day of 4 months, when they slaughtered the lamb for Pesach, Yeshua's Talmudim asked him, "Where do you want us to go and prepare your Seder?" He sent 2 of his Talmudim with these instructions: "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and whichever house he enters, tell the owner of the rabbi, 'Where's the guest room for me, where I am to eat the Pesach meal with my Talmudim?' He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make the preparations there." The Talmudim went off, came to the city, and found things just as he had told them they would be, and they prepared the Seder. When evening came, Yeshua arrived with the 12. As they were reclining and eating, Yeshua said, "Yes, I tell you that one of you is going to betray me." Before we carry on, they are reclining. What is the instruction for Pesach when you are eating that fluffy?
Eat to the left.
Stand, staff in hand, girded, and sandals on your feet, ready to
Ready to go.
run. Because that very next day, you are out of there, you're plundering Egypt, the bondage that you were in, you have now left in a hurry. Disappear. Because it's going to chase you. Your past will chase you. And there's Yeshua, and his disciples are sitting in an upstairs room, and it says they are reclining. Some Bibles say sitting, but the actual word is recline. If you look back at the Greek, that's a recline. So, you have them sitting in something called a triclinium. Triclinium.
Same shape as the door.
Same shape as the door. Exactly. Some people think this shape, there's a general understanding that shape is a Roman way of eating, but some people actually believe that it actually came before the Romans and they actually adopted it from Jewish practices. So we're sitting in a triclinium. The door is here or here, okay? And we have a very interesting layout that we can paint from the scriptures. So when you think of the Last Supper, which in our opinion is actually a Passover Seder, because the text supports it in many ways. When you look at paintings of the Last Supper, what do you see?
They sit.
Straight line, everyone huddling around Yeshua in the middle, right?
Sitting on chairs.
Sitting on chairs, being very Rome-like. Okay? Even Yeshua looks very Roman. Incorrect. They were sitting in the triclinium, and in our understanding, the guest of honor would sit here, right? I'm at the middle, I can communicate with everyone, no matter where I look. Firstly, they were reclining, so they were lying on their left side, so that their right hand was free to dip in and eat, and their feet were up. So they were literally, as their legs, lying down.
We are assuming they're all right-handed.
If they're ambidextrous. But the point is, guys, my art sucks, I'm sorry. Okay.
Art is better than mine.
I stick to stickmen, and clearly I'm still bad at it. Okay? But anyway, you have...
You forgot the ears.
You get it. Okay, so they would be reclining on their left side, leaning against the person behind them, and so it goes. What happens here is you have from the most important all the way to the least important person. Okay? So you have, most likely, we've probably got, I don't know, how many, there were 13 of them, right? So we've got 13 all the way around here. And we have the least important and the most important. Where do you think Yeshua would sit? He should, but he didn't.
Probably.
It was there. The host sits here. The guest of honor sits here. That's why I say it. He's the guest of honor. Okay? And then over here, sorry, guest of honor is here, and the most beloved is here. Beloved. Guest of honor. And this is the host. Right. You with me still? Now if we have a look at some scriptures, we see that in John 13 verse 23, we have John leaning on Yeshua. John leaning on Yeshua. If Yeshua was the host, he would have been sitting here. We understand that. That's a given. Okay? So John must have sat here, the youngest. John the beloved. He sat here. He was the youngest. The guest of honor, who do you think he would have put at the guest of honor? Should he have? In our mindsets. I don't know. If I was the host and I knew this guy was going to sell me out for some silver and I was probably going to beg because of it, I wouldn't put him in the guest of honor. Put him over here. Like, you can fetch our food, servant.
But aren't we crucifying Judas because actually he was an instrument of God. He was the chosen one to
If it wasn't going to be
make
Judas,
the whole thing
it would have
happen.
been someone else.
Yes.
Yes. True. Not crucifying him, just saying in our mindset, what would we
We
have
all
done?
hate him because of what he
Yeah.
did.
But who does he put here?
Judah.
Judas. So he doesn't put him here. He puts him here. And we know that because of Matthew 26:23. Okay? Because Yeshua says, the one who is going to dip his hand with me in the bowl is the one who's going to betray me. And Judas says, surely not me. And Yeshua said, well, you said it. Judas would have sat here because they would have shared their bowl, their dipping bowl. And Vince is going to get into what's actually happening on this table later.
So then does the beloved one have a separate bowl for himself then?
Oh, it could have been. Could have been either. But the point is, that's why I said, surely it's not me. And then they had this whole argument of who's greater than anyone else. And then Yeshua goes into this whole thing of, you know what, guys? The youngest will be the greatest, and the one who's great will be the least. And poor Peter was here. Oh, Pete. He's a servant. He's now, why am I even here? I don't understand. I have to run around. I have to clean feet. The servant would have washed their feet. But he didn't. Who washed their feet?
Yeshua.
Yeshua landed up washing the feet. You see how Yeshua flips these paradigms that we have? The guy who's going to betray me, I will make the guest of honor. I will give him a last chance. I will still show him my love. You're the guest of honor, Judas, even though I know what you're planning. The one who's the youngest is somehow lifted up and stuck at the beloved seat. And he must have been thinking, wow. Maybe he started the argument, hey guys, who's the greatest? Look where I'm sitting, guys. Check where Peter's sitting. And Peter's sitting there going, what is going on here? I understand this whole thing, but how am I the least? But Peter got it later on. Look how Peter grew later on. Standing at the temple steps.
Is John the one who outlives all of the disciples?
Yes, we believe it's the same guy.
Which John is it, the Baptist or the
beloved.
brother? Was it the younger
John
brother?
the Baptist died long.
Yeah.
John the Baptist was in the middle of his ministry.
He kind of got mentioned.
We believe it's the John who wrote Revelation.
One of the Baptists. So that's why he's the beloved.
But he's still flipping the paradigm. Remember, guys, what happened with traditional rabbinic teaching at that time? So you have a rabbi and a disciple. We've learned this in the foundation class. What happens? The rabbi goes around from town to town to town to town. The disciples approach the rabbi, right?
Yes.
And they say, please, Rabbi, can I follow you?
Yes.
The rabbi interviews, and he's asked them questions, and he throws remezes at them, and they have to just sort of answer on the fly, and if he impresses him enough, then the rabbi says, okay, follow me. Lecha chora, follow me. Yeshua didn't do that. Yeshua goes into places where there's fishermen and people that have fell out of Bet Sefer, didn't go to Bet Midrash, the house of study. They went to go become fishermen and whatever. The least likely candidates. He flipped the whole paradigm and he went to them and he said, hey, you come, follow me. Again, he's flipping this whole paradigm of what we know. So however we think we should act when we upset with someone, do the exact opposite and you will see light. If you're angry with someone and all you want to do is backhand them, don't do that, it's a bad idea. Treat them with love and see the difference.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yes, backhanding, bad idea. Well, that's what we want to do. We need to do the opposite.
It's quite a testimony that he put Judas by the guest of honor because he knew that he already knew what was happening, but chose to put him in a place of honor, and it just makes you think that's the opposite of how you treat your enemies. He was loving his enemy, even carrying him up like that.
Yeah. So Peter was in sort of earshot or direct sight of John, and that's how we know he was most likely here. Okay, but again, what do we see with Peter later? He's wandering through towns and people are falling down just to get the shadow on them, so that they can be healed. The least can be raised up. If you think you're not that special, I promise you, David didn't think he was that special. Little short, red-haired little boy running around looking after sheep, all of a sudden he's king. How did that happen? Okay. God will raise up the least, and he will humble the proud. That's how it works. So, when we have the shape of the door, okay, we can see this picture, this imagery. I want you to see that imagery when you're sitting at a triclinium for Pesach. Okay, next picture, yeah?
Where does the youth come?
Okay, so, you could say that, okay, maybe the youth is over here, Yeshua. Yeshua's over here, so it brings life. It's a nice image, doesn't necessarily tie up, but it's a nice image. Okay, we've spoken about the hyssop branch. How much time do I have? Yes. Okay. Partake of the offering. I found this amazing teaching by a guy called Rabbi Foreman. And it basically, if we think the offerings are weird, the Jews also think it's weird, I promise you, because they haven't done it in how many years? They also think, shame poor animals, cruelty. When we sacrifice something, we have to kill an animal, and that has to atone for us in some special way. That's very mystical. They are as confused as us when we talk about offerings. And where are offerings in our Bible? Where do we read about offerings? You see, no one really knows because it's one of those things that we just park in the back. But it has so much meaning. Now, please listen to me. I'm not saying we need to make offerings, we need to make sacrifices. Yeshua clearly paints this picture for us in many ways. But what I want to show you is in Leviticus 1-5, we see all the offerings. Okay? And we're going to quickly group them, and I'm going to show you the application in today's life. Clearly, we're not doing offerings. But there's a meaning behind why God gave them those offerings. And it's very beautiful. So, in Leviticus 1-5, we have 5 types of offerings. We have sin, we have guilt, we have peace, we have burnt, grain. Each one of them sort of falls into a category, and there's 3 categories. I'm going to put it up like this. There's a reason it's in stepping form as well. Sin or guilt is the chatat offering. Okay? Chatat. It means sin offering. We have peace offerings, which are shelamim. Comes from the word shalom, peace. But it also means something else, and we're going to get to that as well. And then the last one, Richard said it. Burnt or olah offerings. So you have burnt, peace, sin. Now I'm going to tell you how this links in with Passover. Sin offerings were mandatory. At that time, you had to have, if you sinned inadvertently, you would go up to tabernacle, temple, outside the door. You would slaughter your offering, put your hand on the head of the offering, basically saying that I should be this animal, but instead you're my substitute. Thank you, Abba. Animal dies. Lots of stuff with the blood happens, and certain parts of the animal go up in smoke. The point is, God gave us a sin offering. Obviously today that's Yeshua. But He gave them a chance to have a sin offering so that they could draw near to God. The whole point of all of these offerings is to draw near. And each one takes you a step higher. This is what they would have understood. Sin offering, it depends what level you were, the sin offering you would give. There would be a sin offering even for a poor person. Okay? The point is, you have to go and give something back to God. Why? Because we transgressed. The word transgression, if you break it up, this word, yeah, means to cross the line or a boundary. We have crossed the line. Think back to Adam and Eve. God said you can have any fruit you want here. Eat whatever you want. Eat of any tree of the garden except from the tree of party. What? How much? Knowledge of good and evil. There was a boundary. Here's God's tree. And He's like, don't cross that line. Eat of anything else, do not cross that line. That is my boundary. That is mine. Don't take it. And we went and we took it. Typical humans. We went and we took it. We ate. We're like, this is nice. Very nice, very nice. We crossed the boundary. And God has now given us a way to give something back to Him. It's that understanding, it's that respect. Okay, God, you know what? I realize that we crossed the boundary. I've crossed the boundary with my sin. I'm going to give you something back. Something that's mine, I'll give to you. I took yours. If you leave your yogurt in the fridge at work, or you take a nice packet of chips to school, and your friend takes it, you're going to be upset, right? Yeah, it's like, that's mine, man. It's my boundary, you crossed it, I'm upset with you. Restitution, the guilt offering, that's the whole point of the guilt offering, right? I want to make restitution with you. First I make restitution with man, but you also have to make right with God. This is the whole point. It comes down to a level of respect. It's giving back to God, not expecting anything back. Who partakes of the sin offering? For those that have studied it. You have a little bull, or whatever the case is, that's his legs, he's going up in fire. Who partakes of that?
No, it's only the priest.
Priest.
Oh, who eats of it?
Yeah, the priest. And it goes up in flames
To God.
to Abba. Right? The people who mediate for God get to enjoy or get to partake. I don't know if they enjoyed it that much, but they get to partake of it. It's symbolic for priests helping people deal with their sin. And God getting something back in return. So that animal can be your korban, so it can draw you near to God. The whole point. Remember, the offerings were to draw near to God.
They must have gone through a lot of animals.
Plenty. But look at there's a practical reason as well for this. The Levites had no inheritance. So this system kept them going. They got food out of it. And their families. So if we understand that this is mandatory, it has to happen. Okay, it says mandatory. It's out of respect for God. That's the first level, out of respect for God. Then we get to the next level. Now I've done my part. I've made right with man. I've made right with God. Now I get to the shelamim, the peace offerings.
So you mentioned something there, which is, I think, very important, because we think we can get away with it. We think that we don't have to make right with our brethren before we come to God.
So Yeshua says, leave your offering at the altar and go make right with men. Before coming to do this. Or this, or this. Okay.
Love your neighbors. Love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah. The next one, or the next two, are both voluntary. You can do it if you want to. There's a beautiful reason for doing it. Shelamim comes from shalom, which means peace. It also means wholeness. So this offering is a wholeness offering. In its most basic understanding, it's like a business transaction. You shake hands. When you shake hands with someone, it's like there's this wholeness. We're holding hands, there's this wholeness with us. We're going to do this thing, we've made an agreement. In its most advanced and most beautiful state, it's marriage. There's this wholeness with marriage. One of the first shelamim was at Mount Sinai, where the people actually made a peace offering with God and a burnt offering. A peace offering with God so that they accepted everything. They're basically telling God, we want to be whole with you. We want to fellowship with you. It's an understanding of, I give you something of mine, you give me something in return. It's marriage, right? It's give and take. It's give and take a lot. But it's out of love. That's literally the entire point of this is love.
So chocolate.
I give you chocolate, you give me a back rub.
But I don't.
That's business transaction.
But Nick, you can't just visualize that in marriage. That could also be love between parent and child.
Correct. But in a sense, we're thinking of God here. So that Sinai was a whole marriage ceremony.
But God being the parent, us being the child.
Yes. But you know, and this is what it gets to. So if you have your offering going up here, right? Who gets to partake of this offering? In the shelamim only, the peace offerings. It's the priests, who's got a turban. It's the person that brought it, and it's God. You're literally having a meal there with God. Is that firing off Passover for you yet? It should. Passover is a shelamim offering. That's what it is. It's also a burnt offering, and we're going to get to that. So I want you to understand, when we can get past this point of respecting God and His boundaries, and understanding that we fall short and we need to make right, we can get to a point where we can enter into a relationship, a proper relationship with God, where we can build that love, where I get to know God in detail. I get to spend time with God and eat with Him. Remember, in a Hebraic mindset, if you're eating with someone, everything is good between you two. And then we get to something even more powerful. And that's the olah, the burnt offering. Burnt offering is actually a bad translation. Olah means offering up, going up. Okay? You know, love is something, but all is something else. In the story of Abraham and Isaac, what do we see? We see old Abraham. go to Isaac and say, hey, come boy, we're going up a mountain and we're going to sacrifice to the Lord. And Isaac's like, cool, let's go. And Abraham brings 2 of his people with him, and they're carrying the wood and everything. And I can just imagine old Isaac standing there going, where is the sacrifice? And they're still walking and they're walking and they're walking, up to the point where Isaac is on the altar, tied down. And he then realizes, okay, I'm the sacrifice. This is weird. But you know what? I trust my father so much. I'm just going to see this out. He could have just run away. Or told his dad, no, cheers, thanks, bye. Oh yeah, you're a man. Yeah, you're old, you're senile, clearly. You want to sacrifice me, I'm God. But he didn't. He had so much faith and trust in his father because his father had such a strong relationship with God. That even Abraham himself, I can just imagine as a father laying my child down. I can't actually imagine doing that. But the point is that Abraham was in such awe and reverence of God that he was going to go through it. And he knew that God's promise would play out. What was the promise? Through his seed, there will come many great nations. Yeah? So Abraham knew, no matter what happens here today, Isaac's going to be somehow okay. I don't know if he's going to resurrect him or whatever, but something's going to happen and everything's going to be fine. And we see this word, I'm not going to get into it now, but we see this, have you ever laid down on the grass and just looked up at the sky at night? And you see millions of stars and you think how small you are? And you wonder, wow, how can God make all of this? It's complete. You are in complete awe. That's the awe that Abraham had. That's the fear of God. That's the awe of God. It's Yud Resh Aleph. It could mean to see or to fear or to revere. In Hebraic understanding, in Jewish, in Hebrew, it's to fear, to see, or to revere. And in the story of Abraham and Isaac, that word comes up a lot. But the point is, we've reached the point now. The point is, we've reached this point where we love God, we have this relationship with Him, but now, the only person that gets to partake of this offering is God Himself. We get to a point where we can surrender everything that is completely special to us. That's our most special possession. Abraham, it was Isaac. And he was willing to surrender that to God. He was putting him on the table and he was like, God, I surrender this boy to you. He's yours. I know I took from you in the beginning and I made balagan, I made wrong decisions. I've made right with you. I respect you, God. I've come and I've got to the point where I can be with you. We can communicate. We can have this special relationship. But now, you know what? I'm taking it a step further and I'm giving you everything that's mine. I'm surrendering it to you. That is exactly what Yeshua did for us. That is exactly what God did for us with Yeshua. A complete and utter offering of His only Son. Abraham's grandson.
With the Abraham and Isaac, God told Abraham to do that. So he wasn't just doing it, or instead of sheepy, I'm going to grab my son.
No, it was an instruction. Yeah.
Following instruction. So there's a lesson in that we should actually follow God's instruction.
Right.
Because there's reasonable things.
Yeah.
Because that was now a shadow of Yeshua, his only son, being given. So Abraham is part of that story. With being obedient. So if we want to be part of that story that God wants to tell, we need to be obedient.
Right. But the point is that Abraham was at this state. He was able, and you need to ask yourself the question, are you able to completely surrender everything that's special to you, to God, without question? Abraham didn't question it, he went. He was like, okay, here's my promise, I'm taking him, I'm trusting. That's why they keep referring to Abraham as the man of trust, of faith. Are you able to completely surrender everything that's special to you and give it back to God? Or just give it to God without expecting anything in return? And this is the point where we need to get. And you know what? Passover, everyone partook of that Passover lamb. We've all partaken of that Passover lamb. It's a Shalomim offering. It's a peace offering between us and God. And yes, it definitely Yeshua is a sin offering. It tells us that. I don't need to give you the verses for that. We know it. But we can see Yeshua playing the role out of love. For God so loved the world, He gave us His Son. God did this for us, and we do it for Him. So we can have that love, and we need to get to the next step, where we completely surrender everything to God, just like God completely surrendered everything to us. He trusted us with His most prized possession. Like Vince has taught before, he has a baby, let's put it in the hands of humans and see what happens. No, that's a lot of trust, especially for us broken people. But look what happened. So do you understand? Does this paint a clearer picture of the meaning of Passover for you, that it's meant to bring you closer to God? It's meant to draw you near, so that your relationship with God can go to that next level. And sometimes, guys, this lasts a long time before you can actually fully trust in God to take over your cared possessions. It took a long time for me to hand over the business to God. Prized possession. My kids were easier, man. How about sort them out? They're yours. And they're doing well. My business, I was like, my business, my business, my business. Don't touch, it's mine. God got me to read a really old book that was really incredibly boring. And in there, what I took out of that was, hand over your business to me. And I did, and things are changing. Things are happening. We need to, and even if they weren't happening, I'd be okay with it. Because let His will be done. We need to get to that point, and Passover is one of those steps in the timeline where we can have that relationship with Abba and build that relationship with Abba. Why do you think you have to read most of Exodus? God's getting you to read the Word. Tell your kids the story of Exodus, so that they can start having that relationship with Abba. Okay? And just to end off, just very quickly, these last few items here. That's the Olah offering. Okay? There's nothing of it remain until morning, burn up everything that's there. Okay? Yeshua gave up His Spirit on the cross. No broken bones we can see. Before they break any of the bones while you're on the cross, because that was the thing that they did, so that you died quicker. Before they broke His kneecaps, Yeshua gave up His Spirit, so that no broken bones would happen. Okay? The whole story of Exodus is the story of the redemption with Yeshua. We've identified that today. And the night of vigil, this is something that I thought was quite funny. And this is, I'm ending off with this, guys. But the night of vigil, in Exodus 12 verse 42, it says it will be God's night of vigil. God was keeping vigil. Where were you guys? Sleeping in your houses hoping that blood is going to protect you. Okay, you maybe didn't sleep that well. Probably not. If I knew that the destroyer would fly over my house that night and I had a son, I'd be freaking out a little bit. But it said that God kept vigil. Over here we see Yeshua coming up out of the Pesach Seder and praying to God. He's keeping vigil, and His disciples are sleeping. Yeshua kept vigil. We can't even get to that point because we're too busy sleeping. So the point is, wake up. Keep vigil. What do you need to do at this time? Remember the whole point. God says, take the chametz out of your house. Your house. This house is physical, but He's more concerned about this house. Get the chametz out of you, everything that's bad. Get it out of you, get rid of it. So that you can draw near. So that hopefully you can get to that next step.
I have
Through
to ask,
Yeshua.
because I'm trying to, what you are telling us, I'm trying to get away from the literal and do it spiritually. So I hope I can bring this across properly, because I'm confused. In the beginning you said that God covers us with His blood. Where is this doorpost within me for God to enter?
You will wear the words on your head and on your arm. That's your doorpost. That's your heart.
That's the trachea.
It's your heart. Your heart sits within that. Your heart is here. Those words are close to your heart.
How does His Spirit enter my body? Through my mouth? With His breath?
It just fills you.
How?
Sure.
I agree.
You're worried about the finer details.
I shouldn't.
No, you're worried worried about the finer details. We don't even understand why men disappear off this planet, why men die. We're never going to understand how everything came into being completely, or how God even exists. The point is that what we know is that God says He will fill us with His Spirit. How He does that? I don't know. Could be air, could go in my ear. I don't care how it goes in. But the point is that it's a spiritual understanding that He's going to fill me with Him, and that my heart changes so that I can walk by His statutes. So the more I'm filled with Him, the more I can do things for Him. The more I can walk like He walked. The more I can observe what He wants me to observe. It doesn't matter. It's not this. I mean, think of it as this bottle, and how do I fill it up? It's how do I get closer to God? His Spirit will enable me to do that. And how do you know when someone's got the Spirit in them? You see a change in them. You see a change. So there's no, I can't test you with a barometer or whatever, the Geiger meter or whatever, and say you've got 4.4 liters of uranium in you. You can't do that. You see a change in someone and you feel that change. So when you start feeling like you're getting closer to God, and we start seeing what happened with Peter, doubt, yes, I love you, like a friend. Carry on, and he's standing on the steps and he's telling everybody, this was the Messiah. A complete change. And complete faith in God.
Sorry, can I say something here? Physically, it's been physically proven that when people pray, there's an activity at the back of your brain. So God made us so that we're hardwired to communicate with Him. That's a physical fact. The second physical fact is that you've got, say, just approximately 100 billion neurons in your brain. Your heart has got 50% more neurons in it. Okay, so the center of your being is actually your heart.
And that is why when you're in pain, you're feeling the pain. Yeah.
You physically, when people are heartbroken now, they're physically being attacked in their heart. And that's the communication. Your brain has to understand that your heart's working and vice versa. And by saying, when anybody believes, it's all about heart. You can read the whole Bible 100 times. It means absolutely nothing until you actually understand that it's about the heart of what's behind it.
Quickly.
I don't fully understand, obviously, myself, but I think it's a nice picture. If you're looking for a picture, also the menorah with the 7 spirits of Elohim, because that He is Spirit. And we can,
Fruits of the Spirit.
It says we can always pray for more of the Spirit and request more of it. And I feel like as our journey goes, those spirits, if you look at wisdom, understanding, all the rest of it, He's busy lighting that already in us. We're sitting learning His Word, so He's giving us knowledge so we can understand. So it's not that He's leaving us in the dark. It will be revealed to us with the spirit of wisdom, but first need the knowledge and the counsel.
Yeah, it's this relationship comes down to a fact that you can have an earthly father and feel nothing for that earthly father because you have chosen that. That father might try and make things right and try and have a good relationship with you, but at the end of the day, it's a choice that you as an individual make with that person. And if you're not willing to make that choice and get to know God in His entirety, and try to figure out every facet of Him, that you'll never get right. But just to get a relationship with Him, that's an action. And you've got to do something to have that action. And it's at that point that, that things happen. And you get closer to God. And you feel like you're closer to God. So that you can realize that you're but nothing on this earth. And that you can give Him everything that you have. And there's change. There's definitely change in your walk. There's change in how you deal with people. There's change in how you talk. You don't just talk the talk, but you walk the walk at the same time.
Sorry, I want to ask 2 questions. I just wanted to say something. You asked, how can it enter you? I think when you read and you listen to God's teaching and you meditate on it and you think about it a lot, it does eventually go down to your heart. Because if I think about the wrong things, I act on it. And if I have to walk around thinking I'm mad at somebody, I act on it eventually. Yeah. So it is pretty much, my eyes read the Word, my ears hear it, I talk about it, and then it gets stuck here, and then it goes down to my heart. My two questions that what I want to ask is, number one, you said that that God spoke clearly to Moshe. I just need that scripture. And if he was slaughtered at 3 o'clock, and that is considered twilight, that Shabbat end at 3 o'clock then?
No, that's the start of twilight until the sun goes down completely.
Okay.
But I'll get you that scripture afterwards. Okay, I'm going to do that.
Numbers 12.
This is Numbers 12. Thank you very much. Numbers 12.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to do the priestly blessing on everyone. Please stand. Okay, Yivarechacha Yehovah v'yishmerecha, Yeheh Yehovah panav elecha v'shinecha, Yisa Yehovah panav elecha v'yasem elecha shalom. Amen.
Amintos.
Amen.